Hello, this is Mr. F. Bacon. Starship History, a joint project by Mr. F. Bacon and Johnny. Intro. In this presentation, I will first talk about the history of the Starship design, and then I will talk about the Starship prototypes built so far. At the end, I will talk about the construction of future prototypes. Please note that this video will get outdated very quickly because of rapid improvements and new prototypes. Falcon XX and Falcon XX Heavy ideas. In 2012, Elon Musk, founder of SpaceX, came up with a Falcon XX design. This would be like the Falcon 9, but have 6 of them, the then planned Merlin 2 engines instead of 9 Merlin engines. This idea never went past the drawing board. The Falcon XX was powerful, but without the reusability, unlike Starship. This is because, although the Merlin 2 had almost as much thrust as the mighty F1 engine, it lacked high efficiency. There was a possible mentioned Falcon XX Heavy, which was basically a much more powerful version of the Falcon XX, with 2 strap-on side boosters. Falcon XX design. The height was probably going to be around 320 to 350 feet, and the diameter would be about 35 feet. There would be 6 Merlin 2 engines on the first stage, but the second stage engines were unknown. The thrust would probably be between 45,000 and 80,000 kilonewtons, and the payload to low Earth orbit would be 140 tons. Potential Falcon XX Heavy designs. Now there's multiple designs of how this could be, because it's not really sure what it would have looked like, but they're wondering if they'd use the normal Falcon XX fairing, or would it use an extended one. The height would probably be between 320 to 350 feet with small fairing, or potentially 400 to 420 feet if it used a big fairing. The diameter would probably be about 105 feet, because 35 times 3 is 105, and there would be 18 Merlin 2 engines on the first stage. The second stage engines are again unknown, but the thrust would be between 135,000 and 240,000 kilonewtons. And the payload to low Earth orbit would be probably about 400 tons. MCT. Around 2013 to 2014, Elon Musk conceived of something called the Mars Colonial Transporter. This would hopefully take humans to Mars. However, not that much was known about the Mars Colonial Transporter because it was only thought of during the early development. MCT design. Unfortunately, I do not have a picture for it or much information really, because not much was known, because not much of the design was actually created before it was changed up. And the height would have probably been around 600 feet and the diameter around 30 to 40 feet. The first stage engines, second stage engines, thrust, payload, that's really unknown. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah. Because, it's really hard to say because, but it is likely there probably would have been at least 40 Raptor engines on the first stage. However, this design, and actually kind of the main reason why I don't have much information, is because it was later canceled in favor of interplanetary transport system. This would be like the current Starship design, but however, it would be made of carbon composites. Plus, it would also be a little bigger and more powerful. ITS design. The height would probably been around 400 feet and the diameter closer to 39 feet. And the engines on the first stage would have probably between 30 and 40 Raptor engines. There would be about 3 sea-level Raptor engines on the second stage and 6 vacuum-optimized Raptor engines on the second stage. And the thrust would be at least 100,000 kilonewtons. The payload to low Earth orbit would be about 200 to 300 tons. However, it is good to note, the payloads I list here for the interplanetary transport system, the BFR, and the Starship, these are just for fully reusability. If you were to expend the whole thing, then the payload would be 550 tons. BFR. In 2017, an interplanetary transport system was renamed to BFR, Big Falcon Rocket. BFR is a fully reusable rocket. The first stage is a booster stage, and the second stage is called Big Falcon Ship. BFR design. The height would probably be about 387 feet, and the diameter would be around 30. And the engines on the first stage would probably be between 28 to 37 Raptor engines, although again, the number is not exactly known. The second stage would have 2, but later 3, sea-level Raptor engines and 4 vacuum-optimized Raptor engines. The thrust would probably be between 60,000 and 80,000 kilonewtons, and the payload to low Earth orbit would be about Starship. Finally, in 2018, the name was changed to Starship. It consists of 2 parts, a first stage known as Super Heavy, like the BFR first stage, and a second stage called Starship. Bonus fact! Starship will be the tallest, the biggest, and the most powerful rocket ever made. So, it's just massive. Starship design. It will probably be about 394 feet tall and a diameter of about 30 feet. There would be between 25 and 32 Raptor engines on the first stage, although it is completely not exactly known exactly because of recent improvements to the Raptor engine. Second stage will probably have 3 sea-level Raptor engines and 3 vacuum-optimized Raptor engines. The thrust would be probably about 50,000 kilonewtons, but actually it's probably going to be more than that, closer to 70,000 kilonewtons. And now it's really hard to see an exact number, but payload to low Earth orbit will be at least 100 metric tons, maybe even up to 150 tons if possible. Probably more, maybe. Starhopper. Starhopper was the first test vehicle, suborbital test rocket, originally 128 feet high and probably about 30 feet in diameter. It had 1 Raptor engine, although original designs called for 3. It had a nose cone, but wind blew it off, unfortunately, so it was about 60 feet tall. It did a tether about 300-foot high hop on April 5th of 2019. Basically, these test hops are to test the engines and structure, software, and hardware on the rocket. The 66-foot hop followed on July 25th, and a 500-foot hop on August 27th. After this, Starhopper was retired. Did you know? Near the end of the 150-meter hop, the engine was starting to give out, but it stayed on, and Starhopper was able to safely land in one piece. Phew! Mark 1. Mark 1 was the next prototype. It was unveiled in September of 2019, and it was about 30 feet wide, about 160 feet tall, and had 3 Raptor engines. It was not meant to fly, and would have likely not anyways. It came apart in a failed pressure test in November of 2019. Now I have to say, obviously the inset picture has an edit, that out of order sign. I just love that. It's hilarious. Mark 2 and Mark 4. Mark 2 and Mark 4 were not completed and ultimately ended up being cancelled. They were like the Mark 1 and Mark 3 prototypes, but these 2 were made in Florida. They were described as dead before arrival and not completed, and because they were choosing Boca Chica, Texas instead of Florida now. Mark 3, later named Serial Number 1. Serial Number 1 was up next, although it was originally called Mark 3. It failed a test due to a thrust puck error on February 28th of 2020. A thrust puck transfers the thrust to the engines. SN2 test tank. SN2 was simply a subscale test tank to test a new thrust puck design after the failure of SN1. SN3 was up next. It failed its cryogenic proof test on April 3rd, 2020. SN4 was next. It successfully did a cryogenic proof test and did static fires, but on May 29th of 2020, its SN4 exploded after a static fire due to a failure with the quick disconnect system. SN5. SN5 is the second Starship prototype to actually get off the ground, along with Starhopper, and it had 1 Raptor engine. On August 4th of 2020, SN5 did a 500-foot hop like Starhopper's final hop. It was fully successful. After the success of SN5, SN6 was up next because they keep wanting to test stuff, and that's okay. That's a pretty good idea. It also had 1 Raptor engine. SN6 passed its tests and did a 500-foot hop on September 3rd of 2020. Everything went well, and the hop was pretty much flawless. SN7, SN7.1, SN7.2 test tanks. These were just subscale test tanks like the SN2 test tank, but they were to test different things. SN7 and SN7.1 were test tanks to test a new type of steel from Starship. I think they changed from 304 steel to 301 or something. And then SN7.2 was used for testing a new thickness of steel, from 4 millimeters to 3 millimeters. SN7 and SN7.1 were purposely tested to destruction. SN8. SN8 was the first high-altitude prototype, and it had 3 Raptor engines, flaps, and a nose cone. It also passed all of its tests. Well, most of it, because, it managed to survive all the tests, but there were some issues. For example, the third test, the vehicle lost dynamics, and the Raptor engine, basically melted itself. The launch was originally scheduled for December 8th of 2020, but it was aborted at T-minus 1.3 seconds due to a Raptor auto abort, so it happened on December 9th. SN8 was the first of its kind to do controlled engine shutdowns and engine relight. And now before I move on this page, I should note, I'm not talking about the Raptor bird, I'm talking about a Raptor engine, like the Starship engines, yeah. It went to 12.5 kilometers, and everything went well except for landing, where it exploded due to low fuel tank pressure. Despite this, SpaceX said it was mostly successful because this was just a test, and there was a very low chance of it actually landing in one piece. Kind of like how, the first test of, for example, the Ariane 5 and the Falcon 1, and yeah, those were both unsuccessful. But after a few launches, they learned, and they were able to make successful rockets. The Ariane 5 is really good today. The Falcon 1 was a good pathfinder for the Falcon 9. And, hopefully, you'll see later, something good happens with SN15. SN9. Serial number 9 was originally planned to launch on January 8th of 2021, but then it was delayed until February 2nd. It went to 10 kilometers, a little shorter than SN8's flight. Along with SN8, everything went well until landing. An error with an engine caused it to not relight, and just one engine on was not enough to land properly. Due to this, SN9 landed hard and exploded. As you can see by the images, you could see there was only one engine on during the landing burn, so another engine unfortunately failed to relight, probably because of some issues, maybe something went wrong during ascent. But as you can see, unfortunately exploded too. SN10. SN10 was the third high-altitude prototype. Like SN9's flight, it went 10 kilometers high. After an attempt boarded at T-minus 0.1 seconds due to abnormally high thrust, SN10 finally launched on March 3rd of 2021. Some of the landing legs failed to deploy, but it still successfully landed in one piece, a little hard, but despite slightly leaning. Around 8 minutes after the landing, SN10 exploded due to a fire that spread to the fuel tanks from low thrust and helium ingestion, because, when it was descending, probably some of the fuel or some of the, propellant or oxidizer, it accidentally got sucked into the engine unintentionally, and then, there it goes. Well, it lands hard, then there's a fire, and then 8 minutes later, SN10 explodes. SN11. SN11 was the fourth and final original high-altitude prototype fully built. SN15 and onward will still be high altitude, but the last one fully made until the design changed with SN15. After some delays in testing, SN11 launched on March 30th of 2021, and it went to 10 kilometers high. SN11's flight was during very foggy weather. However, it successfully launched, but exploded sometime before landing right after engine reignition. This is likely because, I guess it's not really visible in the first image, any of the images, but closer to a minute before, after the liftoff, there was an engine fire, which means, there was a fire near the top of the engine, which essentially basically fried the engine. SN12, SN13, and SN14. SN12, SN13, and SN14 were similar to SN8 through 11. After some parts were built, they were canceled to focus on SN15 and onward. SN12 was scrapped, but the status of SN13 and SN14 are unknown, but they're probably also scrapped. Booster number 1, or Super Heavy number 1. Booster number 1 was the first super heavy prototype. After several long months of construction, it was finally finished. On March 30th of 2021, it was announced that booster number 1 would be a test prototype to test the idea and will be scrapped. Fast fact! BN1 is actually 1 ring short, so that it could fit in the high bay place, like where they stack the Starship rockets, because like it's so tall. It's like hard to tell from this image, but it's like 69 or 70 meters tall. It is crazy. SN15. SN15 was an upgraded Starship, including a revamped thrust plug design. SN15 did a 10-kilometer test flight, like its ill-fated predecessors SN9, SN10, and SN11. SN15 launched on May 5th of 2021. This time, SN15 landed in one piece, and it stayed in one piece. Although the flight was a little cloudy, and an engine failed to relay it, but luckily there's still 2 that related, SN15 was able to softly land in the landing pad. SN15 was the very first high-altitude prototype to land and stay in one piece. Future prototype status as of May 6, 2021. As of May 5th, 2021, many prototypes are in the making. So SN16 is currently fully stacked in the high bay. It is awaiting bottom flaps and rollout to the launch site. SN17 has a few parts done, and SN18 also has some parts done. Not to say the parts done for SN17 include basically almost every bit, except for the flaps. But yes, you got the nose cone, you got the methane header tank, you got the LOX header tank, you got the aft dome, you got the forward dome. Yeah, basically all the stuff is also done for SN17. We just need flaps and we need to put it together. The parts for SN18 include several steel sections and thrust plug, and also the methane header tank and some domes. Now I do have to say, based on like the prototype status for SN18 and SN19, they will probably not be completed to move forward towards SN19 and SN20. Towards SN20. SN19 currently has its methane header tank and thrust plug prepped. SN20 has some sections spotted, including aft dome, forward dome, methane header tank, leg skirt, and several steel sections. Booster number 2 has a few sections spotted, including domes. It has 2 domes at least, and then some steel sections. And then booster number 3 has several aft dome sections, maybe some forward dome sections, I'm not sure. And then they have lots of the steel sections ready. Booster number 2.1. This is pretty interesting. A few parts have been spotted. Unknown what it is intended for. Maybe pre-orbital test, kind of like how SN7 and SN7.1 and SN7.2. Maybe it's just a test tank, baby. Conclusion. In conclusion, this is the Starship history thus far. SpaceX has made a really cool vehicle design, and I cannot wait to see what they do next. Remember something, don't call a Starship an explosion, call it a RUD, Rapid Unscheduled Disassembly. As always, here are my sources. Thank you very much. So like phys.org, Spaceflight 101, NASA Spaceflight, Next Big Future, Teslarty, NASA Spaceflight, The Verge, YouTube, like so much, like. Then please note, sponsored by Space Potatoes Inc. Note, potatoes are plastic. Space Potatoes Inc. may not be sued in any way. Plus, there are not any potatoes available at the moment. So then we have YouTube videos, then we also have SpaceX and more NASA Spaceflight. Thanks to the NASA Spaceflight's team, Boca Chica Gal, and SpaceX for most of the pictures. Creators, Mr. F. Bacon and Johnny. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I will see you next time.